Good morning and welcome back, everyone, to the Explicit Measures podcast. We are back again with some more fun topics around real-time intelligence. Today, our main topics will be action systems and AI applications. That's going to be our main topic today.
Oh, yeah.
There were some recent announcements at FabCon Vienna that I think were kind of exciting. I think one of them being around real-time maps, which is like another thing that was send data into Fabric, and you can get that data mapped out in real time, which is kind of slick. So we'll unpack that a little bit more today. What are these new features? What does this mean for your business? Let's just kind of understand what's going on in those new features areas. Before we begin, Tommy, what news do you have today?
So pretty neat articles here. We actually have two, one on OneLake and the other on data agents and CI/CD. So the first one, Mike, and I know you're really excited about this, is gain end-to-end visibility into data activity using OneLake diagnostics.
This is something that felt like a black box for a little bit.
Yeah, with OneLake, it was really hard to know everything that was going on. So with the OneLake diagnostic, you can actually see who accessed what, when, and how, and it all comes in through JSON and event streamed into a lakehouse. Some of those key capabilities is for internal and external data access, anything that you do with an API, pipelines, or the Fabric UI. And again, everything's stored in an open JSON format, so you can do your own reporting on it. So the charges are similar to your Azure Stored Diagnostics, and it's pretty cool, dude. Finally.
I think this makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of events that are probably happening in the OneLake, and making those things just more visible, I think makes a lot of sense. Tommy, I would argue the majority of my work that I do in Fabric is in OneLake. I mean, it's a lake house, something along those lines. That's the most. I think that's the most used. I think Microsoft said on one of their, I think it was in FabCon Vienna, they were saying how many customers are using everything, and those customers are using a minimum of 3 workloads inside Fabric. And one of those workloads that I think I would say is very used for me as I build things that I find very useful is Lakehouse, pipelines. Those are my 2 main, I think, elements that I'm using there, and maybe a bit of data warehousing. Starting to use more of that now and finding use cases where to use the data warehouse. What would you say, Tommy?
Yeah, I think this is a great introduction to, as we're talking about kind of selling us on real-time intelligence and using the event stream. So honestly, this is a perfect case where real-time would be pretty important, especially in a large organization.
One feature that we have recently on our Intelexos product. So our Intelexos product is an embedded accelerator. It helps companies start embedding Power BI reports or building like a data as a solution or data as a product experience. We are on the Microsoft Partner Showcase for building a data product in this way, but it basically helps you, this product helps you move from building an embedded solution in months down to hours, right? It's a huge improvement in delivering real value from your Power BI reports. But one of the things that are interesting is we just added a feature called data shares. A data share allows you to go from Fabric to a different tenant in Fabric, but using a Lakehouse shortcut or a Lakehouse share. One of the things that's interesting in this diagnostics article, it talks about OneLake diagnostic events will capture external access. So including all activity from the Fabric user experience. When OneLake is protected by workspace private links, the OneLake will capture all of the blob storage operations. So any operation that the blob storage is doing, read this file, write this file, deleted a file, those security operations are now included as part of this, which I think is actually really, really good, especially when you're trying to externally share or give data between different organizations. Again, this is something, I think this is one of these enterprise-y type features that enterprises just want to have. It makes sense that it's there. I think the best part, Tommy, correct me if I'm wrong here, as I read the documentation, it's saying everything gets landed back into the OneLake. So it's just events that are coming back in, and you could push them to your OneLake, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly what it does, okay, in that open JSON format.
And that makes sense to me because then you don't have to have, you're not worrying about like a retention period or how long the stats exist. The only downside of this is you now have to go parse a bunch of JSON, which means you're probably running notebooks or doing some, logging things on top of that to get the understand what's going on in the logs. So it's a double-edged sword. I think you're just going to be fine with it. You'll figure out what the format is and go from there. Cool. Neat article. I like this feature. I think this will be useful for organizations. Probably not going to make everyone like shake their earth and make them like, oh wow, been waiting for this feature for years. This is probably very nuanced for those very specific enterprise organizations that need this one. Looks like you have another one here, Tommy. Another article, CI/CD.
Yes, more on our favorite data agents and something relevant, Mike, because this is what I'm actually doing my session on at Dynamic Summit because I had to change from metric sets. But basically, with data agents and going on now is supports CI/CD and supports ALM flow and really allows for version control and collaboration. So pretty neat, dude.
Do you use data agents today currently? Are you building them right now and using them in your either internally or for customers? Are you using them today?
Yeah. So right now, there's a few customers that are interested in test driving it, but it's been a lot of experimentation on the best data source and then actions with Copilot Studio.
I do think this idea around data agents is, data agents is a newer item inside the Fabric ecosystem. It's, Copilot, it's Agent-E, it's using some sort of large language models behind the scenes. The fact that the time between when you heard about data agents came out and now that it's supported in CI/CD, I think is really encouraging, Tommy. I think it speaks a little bit to what's happening inside the Microsoft ecosystem, which is, I think they're doing a really good job of like shortening the time frame between when a feature comes out and when it gets into CI/CD. Would you kind of agree with that, Tommy? I feel like that's been like a mission for them now, that if we release something, it has to go into CI/CD before we get it to like GA or really out the door. Like it has to be a quick turnaround, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, 1,000%, Mike. I think this is just becoming integral in terms of everything they're doing. Everything in Fabric is really now a developer experience. So you need that collaboration. So it's interesting that that's probably like part of just the normal checklist that they have now.
Now, one thing I'll just note here is, Tommy, just correct me if I'm wrong. When you build a Fabric data agent, you're basically binding that to a lakehouse. Is that kind of correct? A lakehouse or some other data source too, right?
You can choose multiple data sources. So it doesn't have to be just a single lakehouse. It could be a
true
model. It can be a SQL database. It can even be real-time analytics as well.
So here's my question, though. So this is kind of where I'm going with this one. So CI/CD helps you continuous integration, continuous deployment, helps you move that data agent across dev to test to production. The thing I'm kind of curious here, Tommy, I'd be curious what's going on here. When I read this article and I search for the words variable library, I don't see anything that lets me do this. So for example, the connection string to the lakehouse, the connection string to the semantic model, if I'm building a dev test prod type environment with the 3 different environments, and I'm looking at the different environments as we go here, data agents, yes, I can move the data agent between the different environments, but what happens? Does it auto bind between the different environments? Is it picking up a new lakehouse? So I would assume, and this would be a pattern. It's not the only pattern. Let me preface that. A pattern is I'll have data in the dev, I'll have different data in test, and I'll have production data in the production server or wherever that may be. If the data agent is pointing to the dev lakehouse, how does it point to the test lakehouse when you move it to the next environment? Does it still is it still somehow attached to the old development to the development lakehouse or data warehouse, whatever the thing is, or does it now auto rebind to the next level? This is one of the things that I feel is Microsoft is trying to solve with the thing called variable libraries, but that would mean the data agent needs to kind of have the ability to be used by the variable library. And that's where I'm kind of getting a little bit hung up here a bit, which is, okay, I understand that you have CI/CD attached to the item. Yay, great. I'm glad we have it. But what about all the referenced items that it's using as it moves through the different environments? And that's the part that it's been difficult to manage that, I'll say. And even in other things, like semantic models has been okay. But if you're going from notebooks across different environments, that's a little bit challenging. That doesn't really work so well. It's not super smooth. And I think variable libraries is trying to fix that. Data flows, Gen 2, same thing, right? It's difficult to get them kind of across, and you have to use these variable libraries in the data flow to make sure that you can switch out the parameters per environment. There's some things here that I'm not sure if we've already thought them out, or maybe it's on the backlog or needs to get built out, but I need to go play with this one. This is one that I think I need to go directly use, try it out, see how it works, and what happens when you have these things bound to different environments.
Yeah,
Any thoughts around that one,
Tommy?
Tommy?
I don't think if the libraries are supported with data agents yet, but I know they're actively working on that, because really right now there's not a full comprehensive kind of process with data agents, especially when you're doing testing across different data sources, because what the data agent has to do is, it's not just in a sense pointing to a data source like a SQL query, and you just change a parameter and you just know that data in it. So yeah, that's not supported yet, but to be honest, I'm not terribly concerned with that.
I understand and I get it, but when I look at the folder structure, so I am very happy. So going back to this, right? So let's talk about these things that have to move through different environments, right? When I look at the root file structure, so Microsoft in the documentation shows you some JSON files that it's built. The entire data agent is just built with metadata, a whole bunch of JSON that describes how to build the thing. And so you can see there's a files section. It has a configuration folder. Inside the config folder, you have draft and published. You have the data agent.json. You have publish info. So there's information being, like, it's all JSON. It's easy to use structural data that's being used to build the data agent. The tricky part, I think, of this is, how do you configure this to move between environments? And that's kind of where I'm a bit more cautious here a bit. I guess just be aware. You might need to figure out how that works. So anyways, this is brand new, hot off the press, a good feature. I think it's very, very relevant here. It is currently in preview. So again, I think they're probably going to refine the idea and get it worked out here. Maybe we'll see something in the future around parameterizing your data agent so that you can use it in different places, or you can swap out those connection strings as you go. Anyways, just a thought or a side note around that one. Any other news topics? Any beat from the streets that you have, Tommy?
I don't. I think I'm pretty good on beats from the streets, my friend.
All right. Well, that being said, let's jump into our main topic today, and our main topic will be around action systems and AI applications. With that being said, I'd like to introduce everyone back to Chris. Welcome back, or Christopher. I'm trying to go by how you've been going by your name. Christopher, welcome back to the podcast. We really appreciate you being here and jumping in again and talking more with us about all these AI real-time experiences that we're seeing here. So let's maybe frame up the conversation here just a slight bit and just say, okay, action systems and AI applications. You're not going to go find these things maybe in the Microsoft documentation. Chris, maybe frame us out here a little bit. When we talk about action systems or AI applications, what does this definition mean to you? And maybe we can start the conversation there. Give us a kind of a brief introduction or setup here of what you mean by these terms.
Yeah. So action systems are an umbrella term. So if you search for action systems in Microsoft Fabric, you're not going to find a whole bunch of documentation on it, because it's a category that we use to describe all the different consumption methods and consumption artifacts that are available to you within Fabric, right? Mm-hmm. So when we think about what Power BI was, right, when it was Power BI, your main consumption artifact and your main action system was a Power BI report, right? Maybe you had a Power BI dashboard, but those were really kind of limited. Those were really your options, right? Yeah. Now that we're in the Fabric world, there's a ton of other things that have become available to you, right? You were just talking about Fabric data agents, and we have Fabric maps, and we have Activator, and we have reports, and we have real-time dashboards. We have all these different systems that allow us to consume the data. And so the scope of everything that's become available to you is now much greater than what it previously was before. And so we use action systems to describe all the different ways in which you can go consume that data. Right? The goal and the promise of Fabric is, I've got all my data in one place. I can use it in a variety of different forms and formats. When we think about what that would go take us to do in a non-Fabric environment or in the cloud world, that's frequently multiple copies of the data, where I've got a project that I've run for Azure storage, and then I'm processing that data and I'm making it available in a report. And then I have a whole nother project that's running where I've got a whole nother copy of that data running in storage, and then I've got a whole nother layer of compute, and then I'm going and making it available for an AI application. So
Yes.
action systems are just a simple phrase that we use to describe all these different ways in which we can go consume our data.
I like this one. I think this is a great term, actually. I don't know who's branding this one. This must not be Microsoft. This must not be Microsoft marketing. This is probably like the cat team or something.
Yeah, this is a criticism.
I think the term makes a ton of sense to what you're actually describing and what you're talking about. So I think this is a great term. I like the idea of an action system deriving and doing things on top of information. And again, I think we talked about in our last episode that time between like when does data show up and when should I be making decisions about that data? The shorter that decision window needs to be, I think we're really talking more about some of those action-based systems. See data, do something immediately, have actions on top of that. So awesome. Any thoughts there, Tommy, around action systems or the terms there?
Yeah, and I'm looking at your LinkedIn post, and I really like how, excuse me, how you laid it out. And at least this is the edition 2. And really looking at that difference between event streaming Fabric and mirroring in Fabric. It's interesting that you chose mirroring as your comparison. When you look at all the features available in Fabric, why does mirroring to you kind of almost solve the problem to make that, in a sense, a good comparison?
The reason I chose mirroring for that, Tommy, is I get that question almost every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, sometimes a dozen times a day. What is the difference between mirroring my data into Fabric and leveraging a Fabric event stream or an event-driven architecture? What are the things that make those things different? And when should I choose one over the other? So I picked mirroring specifically for that article because I really wanted to just have, honestly, selfishly for me, I wanted to have a place I could point people and say, go read this.
Go read this first and then talk to me.
Read this. It'll make sense. That way I don't get the same question a million times a day.
I love it.
It's worked. So it's been very successful in that endeavor. I'll admit.
So give us kind of maybe like the 10,000 foot view of the summary of like, to answer the question, right? I know I should read the article, but for the listeners who haven't read, I put the article in the chat here. So for those who are listening to the podcast, the article is in the chat as right now. If you want to go read that, when to leverage the event streams or when you're going to use mirroring. What's the 10,000 foot view or summary of this, Chris?
Yeah. Great point. And so for anyone who doesn't have access to the chat, when you might be listening to this later, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the author of what's called the Real-Time Dispatch, which is a weekly weekly article that I publish around all things streaming data. Sometimes I dabble in specifically how it relates to Fabric and how it relates to all things within real-time intelligence, but I really try to keep it higher level around how do event-driven architectures really change the paradigm for how we think about data processing in 2025. So kind of with that kind of shameless plug aside, we'll get back to
it's okay. Your question. You're allowed to do this. You're allowed to totally acceptable. Totally acceptable.
Well, we'll get back to answering your question, right? Around mirroring versus kind of event streaming. And so the way to think about it is mirroring is a very simple way to create a copy of your data and virtualize it, connect it into Fabric. Once you've mirrored that data into Fabric, there's a lot of things that you still have to do to that data. You still have to go process it through Silver. You still have to process through Gold. You have to create your pipelines. You have to create your notebooks. And then at the end of the day, it's primarily available for a report in a lakehouse, right? It's most likely what you're using it for.
Yes.
So although the entry point with mirroring is very simple and straightforward, and it's near real time, we try to make mirroring as quick as we possibly can on the Fabric side, but there can be a delay. Right? There are delays, there are things that come in, the bigger the database, the longer the latency. There's some other considerations and some technical things to think about when it comes to that as well.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, it's very much a extract, load, then I transform it, right? Then I move it to Silver, and then I move it to Gold, and then I go move it all downstream, right?
Can I add just a note there, just to clarify a little bit for me? You're also saying this too, right? So it's more of like a passive getting data in. And what I mean by passive is, from what I understand, mirroring is more looking at the change data capture logs of different systems, watching the data change in the source system, and then using those logs to help update records in the reporting side or the lakehouse side. There's really no like, I'm not listening to anything. I'm not like waiting for a certain message to appear to go do something. It's more of a kind of, and that's what I mean by passive. It's more of like this process that's set up to just make sure that the data in that table is matching what's inside a different server or a different location. Is that kind of a fair mental map of what's going on?
It's a great mental map of what's going on.
Okay.
The other piece and the other caveat I would add to that, it is truly a mirror. So if we think of like a mirror, if you break the original source, then your mirror is going to break as well. And so you're not going to get updated data anymore. So there's things to consider when you look at implementing something like mirroring. The easiest way I always describe it is think of it like a very ETL type approach of I'm moving the data from here, I'm loading it, and then I have to go
do other things.
ELT approach, right?
Okay,
I need to load it and then transform it.
Sure. Okay, makes sense. Got it.
Event streaming is much more of an ETL approach, right? I'm extracting the data, but I'm not dependent on the mirror anymore. I'm just subscribing to an event. Any event happens. Once that event happens, I transform that event in flight, and then I write it to my destination. So think of it like I've taken bronze, silver, and gold, and I've collapsed it and said, I'm just going to do it all in flight. And I'm just going to say, I picked up from the source. I'm going to make the transformations that I want, and then I'm going to go write it wherever.
Nice.
Once I've made that transformation in flight, and I've written it to the destination, my event house or my lake house or wherever I want that to go, I get a whole variety of things that then I can go do on top of that data, in addition to just reporting. Because when I'm capturing those things in real time, I can go use any of these action systems to then go consume that. So whether it's a report or whether it's an activator, it's a trigger, someone just created an order, or hey, sales rep, this account just went from green to red because we had XYZ conditions that occurred, or their sales have dropped by 50%, or their sales have increased by 50% in the last week. Like, hey, what's going on? Like, how are things going? Like, these are all things that you really want to be contextually aware of, like in the moment, where you can start to understand what those pieces are happening. So in its simplest form, mirroring is ELT, event streaming and event-driven architectures are ETL.
Okay.
So it's kind of the nice way that I kind of bucket and can create those different things. And then it really starts to articulate the difference.
Great. I don't have to read the article. You have from the expert. You have the summary. This is good. I really like this. This is a great explanation of this one. So awesome. There's another term that we were talking about here. So that was kind of the first half, which is like action systems. And so maybe Chris, give us a little bit more flavor here. The other term here we're talking about is just AI applications. So again, I think maybe going more towards this, let's unpack what you just. I think this fits very well with your article that you just talked about, which is I'm going to extract the data using events. Events are coming to me. I'm going to listen to those events, transform them, add metadata. And from my experience, and when I've seen some demos of this as well, when you're using real-time things, you have the ability of appending or joining or matching real data against those events that are coming in. Because in my world, these events that come in are usually pretty simple. Sometimes there's a lot of information in them, but sometimes they're very meaningless. There's a lot of IDs. There's things that are not rich enough to actually let users see what's going on. Like you have a customer ID coming in, or there's an event or an email showing up, but you have to go look up that event and append more data to it, and then you can then action off of it, so you know which customer that email came from, or other enrichments. When I look at this, and I think the AI application seems like that tacks on somewhere in the process here, where you're saying, okay, now that I have this real-time event actioning system, now I can apply AI pieces to this that helps me further or enrich more of those actions. Maybe that's not what you're thinking here with the word or your term AI actions, but like applications. Help me unpack that term as well. What does AI applications mean in this realm of real time?
Yeah, so AI is the buzzword to end all buzzwords, I feel, right? There's so many different kind of applications where you can talk about what you described, we really consider contextualizing the stream, right? Okay. So when we think of, to put it in terms of a dimensional model, right? When we capture facts that are happening within a business, we have a dimension, right? And that dimension has all those contextual attributes about everything that's happened, the reference things of like, here's the customer, here's where they live, here's their email address, here's how many kids they have, here's their like all the information that we could possibly want to know,
spend, right? Or whatever, those things,
products and product categories and all those different pieces. In event-driven architectures, we think about that data much differently. We don't think about it doing it in terms of after the fact and saying, I'm going to defer that to a model or a semantic. We refer to it as contextualizing the stream.
Hmm.
And when we contextualize the stream, we apply those transformations directly to the event as it's occurring. So if we get a sensor value or an event, you're right, it's raw, it's simple, there's probably only a few things in it. But we expand that event as it occurs by contextualizing it during flight and say, here's the customer that it associates with. The customer that it associates with is Chris. Chris is, Chris is this years old. He lives in, this location. He's got this number of kids. This is his expected spend, all those different things. And then we add it in kind of one long row. So think about it in terms of almost like a one big table kind of thing of we're bringing all this data, we bring it into one event, and then we take that event and we write it to wherever we're going to write it to, something like an event house or something like a lake house or wherever we're going to. And once we've done that, that's really, you could use AI to maybe supplement some of that and do some of those different things I think you're describing. When we're talking about AI applications here, we're really talking about the AI action systems that you can go use to go consume that data. So we just established a minute ago and talked about, here's all the different action systems that are available to you within Fabric that you can go consume, whether I'm using a map or a Power BI report or an activator or all those different pieces. There's also data agents. Data agents are a form of AI. They're just conversational AI. But when you create a conversational AI system, you really get to, I have the ability to chat with my data, and I'm still in very much a reactive mode. When we talk about the real powers and capabilities that come with event-driven architectures and AI applications, when you look at something like an agentic AI application, to say, these are all the things I know about my data, or these are all the things I don't know about my data. And I want those systems to automatically build and go take some action downstream. Maybe it's a known unknown, right?
Sure.
Activator is great at the known unknowns. Excuse me. Activator is great at the known unknowns, right? I know what it is that I want to go track. I know that these are the exceptions. Where agentic AI applications are great are the unknown unknowns. I don't know what I want to go track. I look at something like an anomaly detector.
Okay.
And
Yes.
And when we look at anomaly detection in RTI, how do I make those anomalies really easy to go identify and then create an agentic workflow on top of that? So we really see it as bringing that the big buzzword of AI and making it real, making it something tangible of not just we AI, right? Like I AI, you AI, we all AI, and making it something of here's really the business impact and the tangible thing. Like we talked about last time with event-driven architectures, you can really get to generating real, tangible, quantitative impact to your business, right? Of like, if this line goes offline, that's costing me something, or if the order doesn't get delivered, that's costing me something, or if an airport and I don't get your bag to you in 30 minutes based on the airline guarantee, right? That's a piece. Or if I'm going to miss the plane and that bag's not going to make it on that plane. Those are all things that are really important in the moment. It doesn't matter 6 hours later or 24 hours later to say, I lost the bag, right? The bag didn't make it on the airplane in time, right? Like that does me no good. Like,
no, it's gone.
Yeah.
I'm traveling. I'm like, I have a customer presentation tomorrow, and now I'm in like my street clothes where I'm not prepared to go meet a customer. And telling me about it tomorrow is not going to do me a whole lot of good, right? Those are things that I want to know in the moment. So being able to combine these two approaches to say, I'm pulling this event data in, I'm transforming this data in flight, then I'm creating these agentic experiences on top to really create these things of whether I know about it or whether I don't know about it is really where we see the real value and the quantitative impact of creating these AI applications.
Wow, this is interesting. So I'm going to just kick it here to you, Tommy. One comment real quick. This is a whole new world. So if I'm looking at this from the lens of like, maybe let me come in this with my Power BI brain, right? I came into this with my Power BI world and brain. This is a whole paradigm shift as to how I've been traditionally thinking about like Power BI, importing, getting data in, regular loads. I mean, this is a whole new way of reimagining a stream of data with, action-based elements, getting a stream of information coming in, and then having real-time anomalies being detected. And again, I'll go back to the example that everyone knows, which is you have a fabric capacity and you're watching it something happens. To me, this is one of these really like very applicable use cases. Everyone understands at some point their fabric capacity throttles out, or some event occurs, or as you're rolling these out, you're getting these initial really big bursts of usage. That's perfect for what anomaly detection should be doing, is to alert someone, to your point, Chris, in the moment at that time. We want to, as a data team, as a centralized data team, become a little bit more proactive. We should know about these things before users come to us and say, hey, something's broken, right? We should know what's going on ahead of that. It makes us look good, right?
It is truly the experience from experience and from everything we know in the industry, when you can get in the position where you can tell your customer about something before your customer tells you about it.
Yes.
It's a game-changing moment, because to your point, and kind of carrying through that example, telling me like capacity throttled tomorrow, it's not super useful if we're in the moment, because today is going to be a miserable day. I'm going to have customers who are going to be yelling at me all day. I'm going to be having all kinds of issues. But if I can get to, hey, I used to run, when I was in consulting way back in the day, I used to create what I would call BI on BI, right? That was always like my favorite thing to do. And I'd call it, I did it, and I'd always create like all these telemetry and logging systems around everything that was happening within the BI environment, right?
Sure.
So, here's the telemetry from the pipelines that are running and the notebooks that are running, and here's the queries that people are running, and here's what they're querying in the semantic model, and then analyze all that information.
Yes.
The reason why I would do that is, one, because the business data is always the business data, right? I always tell the business, like, it's your data. Do with it what you need to go be successful in your business. But the BI on BI data, that's my playground. Like that's my sandbox. I can do whatever I want in there, and no one's going to bother me.
Yeah.
And if I break it, I know that no customer is going to call me and say, Chris, the BI reporting is broken. Like, I was like, great. Like it was my toy, right?
Yes, exactly.
So I had a safe space. I could go play. I could go try all kinds of new things where I could go do it. But
awesome.
One of the kind of the byproducts of that is, when you're able to get to that type of level and that type of observability, you can see and say, hey, I'm sorry that you ran that query and it took 20 seconds to return, right?
Mm-hmm.
We identified the issue. Hey, Mike, we saw that you ran it. We know that it took a little while. We went and fixed, and we made some optimizations in the back end. So next time you run that query, it should run in about 2 seconds, right? And if it doesn't, then let us know.
Yeah.
Those are the experiences that really change it from, man, the system doesn't work, to like, oh, the data team is really working with me. They're on my side. They're trying to go help me out.
It's a confidence builder.
It's a confidence builder, right? And so event-driven architectures is really kind of a continuation of that. It's the carrying through of this ability to say, in the moment, these are the things that are happening. These are the observability pieces. These are the not just observability, but here's the business processes, and here's what I'm looking to go do, where then I can go take. So we can take an abstract term like AI and turn it into something tangible that's real. One thing I tell customers very often is, the line between an activator in Fabric and the line between an agentic AI application is very, very thin. It's extremely thin. The same thing with a logic app, right? So if you're not familiar with activator, think of it like a logic app. The line between a logic app and an agentic application is a thin line. The only difference is one thing I know and the other thing I don't know. So being able to close that gap and make those experiences easier allows you to really turn data from, oh, here's the report that I'm looking at, and then I know I need to go take these actions, or here's all the different pieces, and really start to integrate it into all the business processes.
I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah,
what do you think?
So interesting from when we talk about this from the intelligence side, and the common example is usually we talk about like the security, or like, let's say your suitcase is missing. Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate here, because those systems already exist today to get real-time data, right? Like obviously airports, cybersecurity, debit card, credit cards, all deal with a system to do that automated for anomalies. But we're talking about this in the realm of business intelligence. So it's not like, again, devil's advocate here, it's not like Fabric has rewritten the book for everyone now that all companies can do real-time anomalies. Again, that exists. Particular companies specialize in that. What is different in this for Fabric? Because we're talking about this again with that business intelligence, and I'm looking at the article about the AI with real time and just about, temporal, spatial, and relational, being able to do that in real time. Why is this so groundbreaking, being in the Fabric platform compared to an existing system that is already in use?
So when we look at those existing systems that exist today, and there are a lot of use cases that currently exist, fraud or baggage, but I'd caution and I'd say, oh, well, we should measure, because they're extremely expensive systems to run and maintain today. They're frequently chaining many different systems together. I might have Kafka, maybe I'm using managed Kafka, and I'm using Confluent, and then I'm loading that into a time series store, and then I'm creating some type of a Spark notebook or some type of a job to go analyze that data and then push, and try to do that as quick as I possibly can, right? We call that the faster horses effect, right? Of the Henry Ford of, like, I've got a horse, right? And I'm trying to move it from point A to point B as fast as I possibly can. There's a limit for how much you can compress that to run. Like that horse can only run so fast, and at some point the horse cannot run any faster, no matter how hard you try. But one of the things that Henry Ford used to say was, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have told me they wanted faster horses, right? So that's what we call it, the faster horses effect. And we really envision real-time intelligence as a car, right? So we've taken all these different tools and all these different experiences that took 5, 6, 10 different solutions and 10 different tools to chain together in order to accomplish that. And we've simplified that. Not only have we simplified it and made it 2 tools or 3 tools instead of having all these different tools, but we've also brought it into Fabric in a no-code, low-code way. So without having to maintain the infrastructure of Kafka, or without having to go maintain a ton of pro-code experiences with a bunch of custom Java applications or functions or whatever it is that you're looking for, you're able to do this in a very simple, no-code, low-code experience to really democratize it. When you look at what real-time intelligence has really kind of brought to the table, I think there are a lot of parallels between real-time intelligence today and what Power BI was 10 years ago. Right? Because when Power BI came out, there was a lot of different tools in the market. There was not an easy no-code, low-code tool that really allowed you to visualize things without having all those without having a bunch of expertise. And so RTI has really allowed us to bring those experiences, put them into Fabric, make it in a no-code, low-code form. You're right, you can do it. They've typically been extremely expensive implementations to build, to maintain, to run. And when we look at data projects, and data warehousing and data analytics projects aren't really that much different. You go through a whole project where it's 6-9 months, you go implement it. And I've chosen Kafka and Beam, and maybe I've chosen ClickHouse as my time series store, right? Or whatever it is that I'm building. And then Chris finishes his project, and Tommy comes into the project like 9 months later. Chris's contract ends, so Chris rolls off, and then Tommy shows up, right? And Tommy comes in and is like, what is this? Like, I've never seen anything. Why would you use Beam and ClickHouse? This is a terrible project. Like, we got to start all over again, right?
Yeah.
So you start all over again, right? And it really inhibits the business value from really truly being achieved. So being able to make it a no-code, low-code tool and tool set allows the business to really have that not only simple way to go implement, but also a really simple way to go maintain.
Would you also agree? And I think what I'm hearing you say, Christopher, is a little bit around here. I mean, there's also this kind of easy to connect everything. So one of the things that I like a lot about Fabric has been just the ease of which it is to move data between totally different kinds of compute systems. And what I mean by that is we have KQL, which is like kind of an event, real-time, very fast, hyperscale experience where you can store a lot of data. Then we have lake houses. Semi-structured, structured data can go there, and then you have data warehousing. So these are kind of like my 3 main storage areas where I put data in this. And the fact that when you look at like the documentation, it's not a lot of friction to go between those different elements. Pipelines can read things from a lake house and put it in a warehouse. Pipelines can read things from a warehouse and put it in a lake house. It's this kind of new world of like things that are just kind of interoperable, and they just kind of work together. When I was doing this stuff, and maybe your experiences too, Chris, is your consulting experience, which you were saying kind of earlier, is it's just more painful to go pick out all the different things. Okay, I got to have an event hub. I got to have this system. I got to have that system. And there's a lot of other systems. You have to kind of like know how they work and how to turn them on, and then figure out how to wire them together. It feels like a lot more of the fabric spaces. It's just easier. There's the wiring's kind of built into the product, and it's easier to pick up data from different spaces. Is that kind of another friction point that you see getting removed here?
Yeah, 100%. When we look at what it would previously take us to go implement those and how those solutions have really been implemented, I think Lambda architecture is a great way to think about this, right? And so
Sure.
when we think about kind of Lambda and we think about what needed to go be built, the primary way in which we have built Power BI reports and in which we have built data systems has been Lambda cold path architecture specifically. When we look at it, being able to process that data on a hot path, although we always saw it in the documentation or when we read about Lambda, there's always these great things that are like, well, it's hot path up here, and then it falls to the cold path, and then it goes and does these different pieces. In the real world, that wasn't really something that we could go implement. It was really challenging for us to go do, because when, like we talked about last time, when we start talking about, well, you want to stream that data, I needed to go chain all these different tools together, and I needed to go do all these different pieces and then make it available. It was really challenging. There was not a lot of connective tissue that existed between all those different pieces. But when you look at that from a fabric perspective, because all these tools are in one place, it's very easy for me to say, well, okay, I want to implement a true Lambda architecture. And so I have my hot path, which is rolling data down into my event house. And then I want to go take all these different actions on top of it with all these different action systems that are available to me. Then I want to drop it into a Lambda cold path architecture. And then my Lambda cold path architecture then carries it into my lakehouse and my warehouse and all these other ways in which I want to go consume that data.
Yes.
But like, you get the power to choose to say, do I need that hot path? Do I just want to go Lambda cold path the way that I have been doing before? Do I just want to keep everything hot all the time? There's so many choices to you. And at least for me, I find that very energizing as a data professional, because I've never had more choices in my life than what I have with Fabric. I can really pick and connect all these different pieces together and say, well, for this data source, I want to use mirroring. For this data source, I'm going to go use a stream where I'm going to load it in. Then I'm landing this data into my hot path store, and then I want to go move it into my cold path store and go do all these different things. Like, when I'm creating this, do I want to keep all of my reports directly on top of my hot path architecture, or does it make sense for me to drop those, make those available for cold path, and save my hot path stuff for these event-driven scenarios in which I want? But it's so easy to go implement these things now, where before it was the connective tissue of maybe 10, 15, 20 different tools. It was really difficult to A, build, B, maintain, and C, document.
I like this. What are your thoughts, Tommy? Anything that you want to you're picking up here?
Yeah, and I think that's probably the biggest selling point for me when I'm looking at this, is me and Mike keep going back to this, regardless of what part of Fabric it is the effort we know and the focus that you guys in the Microsoft team have done for that user interface, and being able to set up these very, enterprise level, developer level, products, and provide a nice user interface, and to get up and running. So as we're looking at this, and you have been really pushing as well with, hey, there's really no excuse now to get at least something up and running here. For someone who's listening going, okay, this anomaly detection, this, I, by the way, love the use of known unknowns and unknown unknowns.
Tommy, you talked about that a number of times in the past, Tommy. Like,
yes, isn't that
there are known knowns and there's known unknowns. There's unknown unknowns.
the old Donald Rumsfeld quote.
Yeah, it's Donald
Rumsfeld
quote. Yeah. So, hey, you know what? That was pretty good. So
it was very good.
Good call back. You've been really pushing for, what BI is going to be in the future is, rather than just simply being reactive, is helping us find things that we otherwise weren't looking for, or more importantly, to get those alerts. And there's really like three main products right now that I see that are trying to allow to do that. So obviously there's the anomaly detection, the Fabric activator, and then there's even one in the Power BI reports too. I forgot what is actually called, but you can actually get notified on a visual. Is that still something that's being worked on or a big focus?
The alerts in Power BI reports.
Yeah, that actually goes to the event stream, or that might have gone the way of metric sets.
That goes to an event stream.
Tommy, are you describing like an event stream is happening, and then from that you're getting alerts directly in like a Power BI report, or you're kicking things off, or you're talking more like in the report? So goals, metric sets kind of thing, right? So I'm in a refresh of a report. I'm looking at some analytics on that, and then I'm getting an alert from, hey, this measure went below a certain value. Is that what you're talking about, the goals, basically?
Yeah, it used to be part of the Power BI report initially when Fabric came out. I think I have to have an event stream set up, but it's not just a normal alert. It would actually push it to an event stream in a Power BI report. That actually might have gotten deprecated.
It might be. I'm not super familiar with that. I'd have to look at it. I honestly don't know.
Oh, Power BI Activator. That's what it's called.
So Power BI Activator became Activator. And
Okay.
Activator is kind of the connective glue that holds a lot of those different pieces together. It is Activator deprecated? Certainly not. We're doing a lot of work and investment in that space to really talk about specifically what we're talking about here, right? Agentic applications and how do we leverage Activator to go identify these known knowns and these known unknowns within our environment to go identify and trigger those pieces. When it comes to anomalies, I think anomaly detection is really interesting because it's really, there are so many tools in which we use to consume and create anomaly detection. And within Fabric, I frequently joke that anomaly detection is the first thing in RTI, which you can do in 3 different ways. It's really just entirely up to you how you want to go to it. You can do it with the new no-code interface that we've created. You can do it in low code because there's a KQL function, which is also happens to be my favorite KQL function, which is called series decompose anomalies. And there's another way you can do it where you could just create a notebook on top of an event house and just do it the pro code way, right? So however you want to do your anomaly detection, whether it's no code, low code, or pro code, RTI has got a great solution for you, right? It's whichever one you want. But when you look at kind of all the other ways in which you can go do it, like you said, you can do it in Power BI, you can do it in Spark, you can do it in all these other different ways. So it's really entirely up to you on how you want to go create those things and how you want to do. But what I would also say is I think detecting an anomaly alone is very similar to just creating a report, right? I've identified an anomaly. Okay, now what? Right? What do I go do? What should I do about it? Right? Should I do anything? I used to have a manager a really long time ago, and I always liked the way that he would challenge me as an analyst, because when I would talk to him and I would tell him something from a data piece, and I would say, sales are down by 20% or whatever, he would always look at me and he'd go, so what? Right?
Yeah.
Well, so what? Like, why? Like, what am I supposed to do about it? Right?
Yes.
Don't just tell me the numbers down. Don't
Yes.
just tell me what's happening. And when we look at reports are really good at giving the number, right?
Yes.
Reports are up by 7%, right? Or there are 7 exceptions that are happening on this specific business process. So what? Right? What do I need to go do as a user, as a person, as the human who can as actually consumes that data, that then takes that to the next step, that makes the action, right? So it allows us to really start to bridge some of these gaps together to say, regardless of however you want to calculate your anomalies or build your reports or whatever, these action systems allow us to go take those to the next step. It allows us to go answer the so what to the business, to say, these are the things, this is why it's important to you, right? There are 7 exceptions in this business process, and these are the things that you should go do next to go fix those business processes.
Yes, correct.
And like as we get more sophisticated and as we get deeper and more mature in the AI space, I think then the question becomes, okay, there are 7 exceptions in this business process, and these are the things that you should go do. But now systemically, I know historically, these are the ways that you fix that problem. So as a system, I know what to go do. Do you mind if I just go do it as an AI application? Can I go fix that? Where then it's just integrated as a part. And then as a business user, I no longer have to even worry about the exception, because I know if that exception occurs, then an agentic AI application will just go close that gap for me. And that could become applicable in so many scenarios around all the different things that we're looking for, right? We're talking about exceptions in a business process here, but what about data quality, right? We spend so much time talking about data quality, and when
Yes.
we look at data quality and we look at fixing data quality with or master data in a data analytics system, we're doing it downstream after the fact. The transactional system.
You're hitting a chord here that I love, because this is a major problem. This is a major problem.
This is a major problem.
Yeah,
right?
we don't have the tooling to get back into, like, we've seen there's a problem, someone needs to fix it, and we keep having to throw humans in the loop. Like, this is a prime opportunity for like agentic somethings to go fix the stuff somewhere else.
Right. And so as we mature,
we
mature in the space, we say, hey, this transactional system generated this quality problem. I know that these are the data quality rules that I need to go fix, but instead of putting a band-aid over top of it in a dimension or in my data analytics system, why don't I just intercept the event as that event got generated and send it upstream to the original application and tell the application, hey, fix it, and then send me a new event, and then I log. And then not only do I have the correct event where I can intercept it in real time and go tell the business user to go fix their data quality problem or whatever, but I also have a record of that as well. So I can say this application generated these problems over the amount of time. So this is an application that we should go look and go fix. There are so many use cases where this really starts to apply around how do I get more mature and get more sophisticated around all the different pieces. And I think from a pipeline perspective, this also allows us to start to ask the question of, well, let me ask you a question, Mike and Tommy, I think, before I kind of go too much point. How many times in your career has a pipeline failed because one row was bad in that batch or that pipeline for whatever it is? That pipeline's processing 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 rows a day. One row is bad because someone wrote Chris in a date time field and the whole thing breaks.
People are crafty. People are very crafty, and they'll add whatever they can wherever they can add it, because they think, oh, that's a good idea, I'll put it there. But in reality, it's actually forcibly breaking our pipelines and causing things to fail. Like, yes, I'd rather kick that one record out, notify someone immediately, hey, there's a bad record, I kicked it out, I still loaded your data, you got to go find this, something happened here. Yeah, it's great.
And so when we look at this and we say, okay, we have all these tools and we have all these approaches that we've come up with over time to say, well, if this record fails, then we're going to ignore data. We're going to ignore the data type, and we're just going to write it, and we're going to clean it up after the fact, and we're going to do all these different pieces. These are all after the fact things. When we can get to pulling this data from these applications in event-driven architecture from an event system and say, as that system generates, say, Chris just wrote Chris in a date time field, right? I'm going to go process that event. I'm going to transform that one event in flight as it's coming. Hey, Chris, drop that to a dead letter queue, drop that to something, send it back to the application in real time as Chris is working in the application, and say, Chris, you can't do that. Like, can you put in an actual date time field and not break the downstream system? Where you can really start to integrate some of these systems together to say, I'm analyzing the data in real time. And I'm also, not just from a process perspective, but I'm also able to fix some of these upstream data quality problems that I have, and then go kind of take whatever downstream thing that I wanted to go occur. So it really opens the door for a ton of these different use cases that we've really just barely scratched the surface on things that are capable of us to do.
You've really lit a fire in my mind around the data quality aspect of things, and I really like what your point there, Chris. I think this is really strong. Because one of the things, and Tommy, you and I have talked about this a lot on the podcast, which has been data quality is kind of an expensive proposition to organizations to just implement it. You've got to be able to like stand back and say, okay, what does data quality look like for our team for this table? You got to go through the different columns themselves and say, okay, this column is a ID, it can't be blank, right? There's some general rules that you're trying to apply, and typically those are like a person is standing there looking at the data and making up the rules as it goes. About what is requiring integrity inside the data quality. Your note around agentic things that can help with this makes this really interesting, because what that does is, I think the mechanics of, in the same way that too many thoughts, I'm slowing down. Let me pause. In the same way that like an agentic thing can then build websites or codes or functions very well in code or software, why can't the agentic space do the same thing for our data quality. Hey, here's a table of data. Here's the things that I care about. You talk to the AI about those items, and it goes through and says, here's a base set of rules you'd like me to apply every time this data loads in, and we'll check those rules as we go. And so the agentic piece of this could start building data quality processes for you faster, quicker. It can write its own SQL statements. So when that data comes in, they can do a couple, like 3 or 4 SQL tests, write its statements, check them, make sure there's nothing wrong, and then approve it and kind of move it through. This really feels like a potential turning point or an opportunity for those of you who are listening, small startup companies or whatever. This seems like an opportunity. Someone should build this, and then this could be a next $1 million idea of just turning these data quality aspects on, talking to a language model and having it build rules, check quality, notify you when things are all there. And all this, I think, builds on top of this this actions, right? It all goes back to action systems. This is an action system we can use with a lot of AI stuff. And I'm excited about that because it brings my cost down to implement data quality, which I think is amazing.
And I think this is the biggest thing for me too, where you think about even the non-traditional real-time departments or industries where, again, a lot of them still run on some type of automation, but everything, I think to your point, Chris, is so everything has to be a known. If you're doing email marketing, if you're doing website tracking, Mike, we were talking about this the other day. I'm giving it 6 months until someone creates a website that will automatically generate as you navigate the site.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, my thinking here is like, why even build a website anymore? Build an experience, talk to a large language model, let it think of building the website in real time when you go there. And I'm seeing things like the writing's on the wall here. It's only a matter of time before someone clicks a button and the next page you go to isn't even there. It doesn't exist yet. The AI is figuring out what to build next when you click that button. This is really changing quickly, and yeah, this is exciting to me. So I like where we're going with this one. I do think we had a lot of good conversation pieces right here. I do want to start wrapping things up here a little bit. So let's maybe kind of between action systems and unpacking AI applications. Chris, give us kind of like maybe your final thoughts around this topic for today, and then we'll kick it over to Tommy.
Yeah, I think final thoughts are we're truly at a paradigm shifting moment in the data space. We need to stop thinking about event-driven architectures as just a stream of like it's only for sensor data. I think when we talk about data quality and when we talk about all these other pieces, the use cases and the applicability are really across a wide variety of different pieces. And so final thought would be start thinking about data from a perspective of, instead of processing the entire data set of all 10,000 rows or all 100,000 rows or however much data you're trying to process on a file,
Sure.
How do you break that down to say, how do I process these rows individually? And if you come from a developer background, then you've probably already very familiar with that. So like think about that stream or that row of data and say, what are the things that I want to apply to this data as it's occurring, right? At that moment in time when it occurs, what are the things that are important? And maybe it's a business process and maybe it's just a data quality thing, but all these things really become important. So over to you, Tommy.
Yeah. So for me, it's really, I think the realization that the conversation with AI, and it really belongs in the loop where our decisions are going to happen. How do we actually really bring to life that buzz phrase, insights to actions? And action systems help us turn that data into decisions where we don't have to set up every single part of it. Real time for me only matters if what our responses are going to be. And I think I am shifting my mindset on what I've always looked at real time, and thinking about this more for my own business, for things that are not, again, the traditional mold of real-time automation. So I'm really excited to see as this grows and progresses.
I think for me, the final takeaway or the final thought here is I really take away from this conversation, and when I look at the landscape of all of Fabric, what it can do, I think there's a really big opportunity that Microsoft has built here for businesses is just to move across these different work engines very seamlessly. And now we're seeing event-driven architectures. We're seeing action-based elements that can kind of occur in multiple places. Bring data down to the lakehouse. Acknowledge when a new file appears, then do something, right? So that's something kind of more action-based. Having real-time data streaming in, and then as the data comes in, checking data quality as the data comes in. These are really interesting topics here. And I think for me, there's like what the space of BI was traditionally in Power BI had like a limited set of walls, right? And there was a couple areas where you could do real time. I feel like Fabric has just expanded the capabilities, not just double or triple, but like exponentially. We've gotten more capability available to us. And now with the anomaly detection directly inside the service, it's like a button press. It's a button press. You kind of pick the anomaly detection, you throw down some variables. It's pretty straightforward to set up. This is easier than we've ever done before. So I'm very optimistic for the future in this space. I think this is a really good opportunity for businesses to start changing how they do business. I'd also maybe argue if you don't at least understand and look at this, your competitors are. So it's almost like a competitive feature now. Now the tools are at your disposal. If you're not doing more of these real-time eventing things with Fabric, your competitors will be doing it, and they may be more nimble than you if you're not staying competitive in this space. So it's kind of interesting. Really like this topic. This was really good. Thank you very much, Christopher, for joining us and kind of unpacking this, which was really wonderful.
Thanks for the time.
That being said, let's just go through a quick, we know your time is extremely valuable. Thank you very much for spending an hour with us. I hope you learned something new around AI and agentic workflows with real-time analytics. I hope there's some more thoughts or things you can unpack here as well for your business. Hopefully it was a little bit educational as well. That being said, Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. And share with a friend, since, we do this for free. Do you have a question, idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode? Head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central on all powerbi.tips social media channels.
Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.